Thank you, sir. At the outset, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. My talk today is on methods of splitting the elastic and the difficult nucleus. Now, we all know that the hard cataract is a challenge for the surgeon because of multiple factors. There is a compromise in the visibility and capsular fibrosis, which will make the rex's initiation and the subsequent completion difficult. Intumescent cataracts are associated with a reduction in the anterior chamber depth, which further reduces the space for surgical maneuvering. Additionally, the hard nuclei, especially these diabetic cataracts, have leathery fibers, which makes the posterior plate hard to crack. So, before an ideal nucleotomy, this requires an ideal rexis. It is imperative to stain the capsule with trypan blue in these cases in order to improve the subsequent visualization both during the rexis and the phacoemulsification. The Argentinian flag sign is a commonly associated complication wherein you see an anterior capsular split with these intumescent cataracts. This is secondary to an increase in the intralenticular pressure. So there are various ways of avoiding the Argentinian flag sign. This is a hypermature cataract which has an outer liquefied cortex and rock-hard nuclear core. We begin by painting the anterior lens capsule by trypan blue. This should be done uniformly. One can take their time to make sure that the trypan blue has been put all over. So in order to avoid the Argentinian flag sign, we form the anterior chamber with a cohesive OVD so the anterior convexity of the lens is reduced. The surgeon can then pierce the center of the capsule with a needle which is mounted on a 3 cc syringe half filled with BSS and immediately aspirate this liquefied material. The needle can also be used to provide a slight posterior pressure on the nucleus to further decompress the bag. The subsequent rexis can then be initiated and completed with relative ease using a microrexis forceps. In this case, the microrexis forceps has been introduced through the main incision. However, in order to have a better stabilization of the anterior chamber, one can also use the paracentesis for the same maneuver. So you begin again with a cohesive OVD to flatten the anterior convexity. This is followed by a gentle nick which is made with the cystotome. The remaining procedures can then be done from the paracentesis itself, wherein the microincisional rexis forceps is used. The rexis is then pulled in a circumferential fashion and is completed. This can be done in 2 steps, wherein one first makes a smaller rexis, follows it with a gentle hydro so that the liquefied cortex is released and the intralenticular pressure further comes down. The second step would then be to make a larger capsular rexis. This can be done by making a nick with a micro scissors, and it is subsequently then enlarged. The next important step to get right is the hydrodissection. You need to remember here that this nucleus is bulky and the space between the nucleus and the posterior capsule is limited, so we might have a risk of a sudden posterior capsular blowout. This can be prevented by decompressing the nucleus upon forward movement. Additionally, multiple quadrants of small fluid are preferred as against a large single quadrant hydrodissection. It is also important to cleave these corticular capsular adhesions to allow subsequent free rotation of the nucleus. So how does one target the nucleus? As I alluded to earlier, the important things to remember is that the nucleus has achieved maximum density. The lens fibers are hard and adherent to each other, and more often there is little or no cortical cushion, thereby it increases the risk of a posterior capsular dehiscence. So there are multiple ways to skin the cat. You can trench, split, chop, or use a combination of all. The basis remains the same. A superficial crack does not do because it allows only splitting of the anterior lenticule fibers, wherein the posterior plate is still left intact, which gives you subsequent difficulties in phacoemulsification. So one needs a groove which is broader and wider than usual to allow the instruments to be introduced at a deeper plane. This will now allow the forces of lateral displacement to be more effective, allowing the posterior fibers to get separated in totality. The choice of the technique depends on the preference of the surgeon. So this is a crater and chop wherein we have first made a deep trench in order to debulk the central core of the nucleus and to get a more posterior hold. You can see that the subsequent hold that we get is more peripheral as compared to a direct chop, wherein you can now embed in totality into the periphery, which is thinner than the core. This is then followed by a lateral separation till you achieve a complete separation up to the posterior plate. This can be done in a multi-level technique wherein the tip is first introduced in the nucleus and the vertical element of the chopper helps to create a small cleavage. The tip is then subsequently buried deeper and deeper alongside with the chopper, and this is done at multiple levels till you have a full chop which propagates all the way down till the posterior plate. A word on the latest advancement in cataract surgery, which is the femtosecond laser. Now we already know that it brings about an increased precision as compared to traditional phacoemulsification, but does it show any advantages in these challenging cases? The wide cataract, as I had alluded to earlier, has an increase in the intralenticular pressure, which results in the Argentinian flag sign. The femtosecond laser, on the other hand, works in a closed chamber and delivers a precise capsulotomy. The important thing here to remember is to always stain the anterior capsule, as the egress of fluid may hinder the subsequent laser, resulting in uncut areas. These microadhesions can be dealt with either with a forceps or a cystotome, and the rhexis is then pulled in into the center. The nuclear fractus in these optically dense cataracts may be suboptimal, but it still gives you cleavage planes. Very often these are associated with dense fibrotic capsules wherein the energy of the femto may be inadequate to cut through these areas. In this case, one first gathers the cut areas to the center and then can use a micro scissors to complete the capsulotomy. One is able to achieve an in-the-bag implantation with a well-centered IOL. So the femtosecond laser will...
Possible for you to sum up, please, Gitanjali?
I'm
We're running
done.
a little
Okay.
short on time.
I'll just move on. So in hard cataracts, you should use smaller grid sizes, which essentially help to give you clearer corneas and reduce macular edema by reducing the phaco time. I'll just end with this video wherein you can see that the nucleus has been broken up into 6 fragments. This is just to show you that the laser actually penetrates to the depth of the core, and you can see pneumodissection bubbles secondary to the femtosecond delivery. So I'll just end with important caveats. The first is that there is a potential for post-laser pupillary meiosis because of prostaglandin release. So in cases of femtolaser, non-steroidal should be administered preoperatively at least 3 days before. One should tap the nucleus gently or rock it so the bubbles secondary to pneumodissection escape and there is no blowout. Again, a smaller grid size is preferred. So I'll conclude by saying with the ideal technique and the appropriate technology, one can deliver optimal outcomes. Thank you.